Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Christine Burkwood. Welcome to East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Vice Chair this year of your Board of Trustees, and I would like to extend a special welcome to any newcomers who are with us this morning, and I encourage you to spend some time getting to know us. If you would like to be on our mailing list, we invite you to sign up at the greeters table or via email. You will find additional information at the pamphlet rack in the narthex. Our greeters will be happy to answer any questions. Please join us this time for coffee and conversation in the back of the sanctuary after the service. We're so happy to be able to offer coffee. If you have not already done so, please turn off or silence your cell phone or any electronic noisemakers you may have with you. And please check your order of service for announcements and calendar information. We're going to begin with the words of Reverend Chris Schreiner. Our denomination is unique because every Unitarian Universalist has the right to develop a personal philosophy of life without being told what to believe. We can learn from all philosophies and religions, and also from science and the arts. We explore important life issues in a caring community, united by shared values rather than by shared theological opinions. And no matter what we do believe about theology or philosophy, we try to live a good life and leave the world a better place than we found it. Now, may we journey together in our shared worship.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm the Reverend Joseph Donatone, and it is my sincere honor this morning to be with you. And what more can be said beyond the words that Christine chose to read earlier? So I'm just going to take a moment to lift up how wonderful it is to be together in this space, in real life, but also continuing to welcome those of you who are joining us virtually. You are part of this community as well. Friends, I invite you now to join me in worship. If you are interested and able, please follow along to our first hymn, Wake Now My Senses.
Sing. They can sing.
Oh, we are singing. Please sing along. How about that?
King with a well of creation.
The words for our chalice lighting this morning come from Reverend Audette Fulbright. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works pass it boldly to a new generation. So our time for all ages this morning, adjust that a little bit. Our time for all ages this morning is a parable that I am very, very fond of. And you may have heard it called the parable of the spoons, the parable of heaven and hell. And it goes something like this. One day a man said to God, "God, I would like to know what heaven and hell are like." God showed the man 2 doors. Inside the first one, in the middle of the room, was a large round table with a large pot of vegetable stew. It smelled delicious and made the man's mouth water. But the people sitting around the table were sickly and thin. They appeared to be famished. They were holding spoons with very long handles, and each found it possible to reach into the pot of stew to take a spoonful. But because the handle was longer than their arms, they could not get the spoons back into their mouths. The man shuddered at the sight of their misery and suffering. And God said, "You have seen hell." Behind the second door, the room appeared exactly the same. There was a large round table with the large pot of wonderful vegetable stew that made the man's mouth water. The people had the same long-handled spoons, but they were nourished and plump, laughing and talking. The man said, "I don't understand." God smiled. "It is simple," he said. "Love only requires one skill. These people learned early on to share and feed one another, while the greedy only think of themselves." The end.
Good morning. We missed something in the order of worship. Right now is a time of reflection of my membership and stewardship to the church, because this is the start of our stewardship campaign. So, good morning, my fellow church members and friends. It is so good to be here together and to actually see so many familiar faces. Thank you for joining us in person and online. I am glad you are participating in the manner in which you feel comfortable. My name, again, is Christine Berkwood, and I am the Vice Chair of our Board of Trustees here at East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. And as such, I have the honor of being this year's Stewardship Chair. Our church is fully funded by its membership and friends, by financial support, offering of skills, experience and time, physical and mental labor to keep the lights on, both in spirits and in our buildings for others to see. We are the people who sustain this congregation, and hopefully we are sustained in return. Our theme this year is Sustenance for Our Shared Journey, and together we share the joys and responsibility of community. This congregation has sustained me from the first day I entered the doors in this building. I entered with nominal experience in church-going culture. For a time in my childhood, I went to a Catholic elementary school. I loved the nuns there. They were joyous, loving, and full of humor. I wanted to be like them in the way they interacted in the world, joyful, caring, and with ease. I was what we call unchurched. I would go to church with friends on Sunday morning if I slept over on Saturday night. I loved the community there, but some words of the service or some teachings just didn't sit right with me. I found that I usually had some conflict in my thoughts and tightness in my physical body when visiting various houses of worship. There was something inviting in the sacred environment and the community, but also something was missing for me. The day I entered East Shore's door, I experienced a welcoming, even an invitation to explore myself and my place in a greater community, that of the church and of the world. There was no rush on this journey, but an offering of new perspectives to think about and ways of being. In the first years, the worship services were very educational and historical, giving some grounding. Then they were more homey and folksy and even nurturing, followed by more spiritual offerings. The services changed, the members changed, and I changed over time. Interspersed with guest ministers and presenters, there was also the opportunity to serve on the worship arts team, where we co-created services with and between ministers. Several times, I was able to take on the responsibility of creating a whole worship service on my own. And as much work as it was to present a worship service from beginning to end, those services were the most meaningful to me. They forced a self-reflection I had been desiring, but never did of my own accord. There was collaboration around the theme with Marge Hill and the choir, who supported the topic through the appropriate selection of music. There was creativity in designing either a meditation or a communion dovetailing with the topic. There was a warm reception from the congregation after the service that made the hours spent in crafting the sermon, choosing readings, and the music gratifying. I found that when working on creating a worship service to offer the congregation, I nourished myself, and I hope others were nourished by it. This congregation provides me, us, with the opportunity to explore our faith and to share that exploration in the most vulnerable but supportive way. In the past, I have done it through standing up here and giving my voice and sharing my inner self with you. Not something I am usually comfortable doing. This congregation has seen me through raising the two younger wonderful adults, Robin and Spencer. I specifically wanted my children raised in a faith community that gave them the tools to be compassionate and open-minded in the world. They have benefited from the faith development classes, the Our Whole Lives program, and the Coming of Age program. They are now grounded, articulate, and self-aware young people who are venturing out into adulthood. I believe East Shore was a large influence on how they show up in the world as caring, joyful, and loving people. Over the 20 years of my membership, I have been invited to assist with sound at the back of the sanctuary and be friends with Lorna. Teach our young people about faith traditions around the world. Facilitate Our Whole Lives and Coming of Age programs for the youth. I have been married right under this beacon with the loving support of this community literally surrounding me at the service. I have and continue to be a mentor to one of our youth, Ember. I have been on a search committee for a developmental minister and then on the subsequent committee on ministry. I've been elected to the board in the capacity of religious education chair, trustee, and now vice chair. There were periods of time between where I had respite too. I have been embraced by Joyce, hosted tea parties, and chaperoned youth on a pilgrimage trip to Boston. I continue to participate in our early morning prayer circle in the chapel or on my front porch sitting on my prayer benches in the summer. I have attended Vespers, Seders, drumming and chanting circles, Tai Chi, Tenebrae, Chillicothe, marches in Washington, D.C. and downtown Cleveland, Summer Institute, regional leadership programs, regional youth conventions where I have slept or not slept on floors for a weekend. All this may sound overwhelming in its abundance, and it is abundance, but I have found it to be life-giving and energizing. And by no means is this the extent to what I have experienced here at East Shore. In all the roles and activities, I have grown as an individual in my faith, as a leader, and as a member of this community. I have made friends who are closer than family. I pledge to East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church because it has sustained me through changes in my adult life. It has guided my children into adulthood, and it has provided me with supportive opportunities to enrich my life spiritually and in leadership. My life's journey has been enriched by my participation in this community we have built here together. I pledge to sustain East Shore's presence so that others may find us and join us here, a family of care and a community of explorers. Thank you.
And now a time for joys and cares. That period in the service where we join together and remember the parts of our lives that bring us happiness and the parts of our lives which bring us concern. Usually, we write things like that in this book. Today, there are none of them in there. However, I will lift up the joy that we are called to give, whether that is giving ourselves over to self-reflection and growth, or reaching our big spoon into the pot of what we have and giving whatever we can. Also, we heard last week that Ross Fossen has come home and is under hospice care. If you would like to reach out to Mariana at this time, during this difficult time, she is asking that you reach out through phone calls and no visitors at this time. With that, I invite you to hold in your hand a stone, if you grabbed one at the top of the aisle or brought one with you this morning, and give to that stone whatever joys and cares you may have on your hearts this morning. We will observe a moment of silence, and when the singing bowl sounds, I invite you to take that stone and place it in the bowl here in the center of our sanctuary, to eventually be returned to the landscape around this building as a part of what we give to this community.
I invite you to join me in a moment of prayer. Spirit of life and endless wonder, for whom we give many names and no name at all, we lift up to you our concerns today. May the burdens of those who carry these concerns be lightened in this community of support. We lift up especially the people of Ukraine who are suffering and need that support more than ever. We also lift up our gratitude that joy in community is joy amplified. And we pray that you are with us in celebration of those joys we bring with us today. Spirit of life, we pray all these things and those things that are still quiet and unspoken in our hearts. Amen. I'm going to lift up that I feel a little rusty. Been doing our services via Zoom and being back here in person and shifting our order of service around is challenging, more challenging than I thought it was going to be. So this morning I'm going to start with a true story. I was 35 years old and it was my last day of rehab for alcoholism and drug addiction. A counselor who I came to trust pulled me aside that afternoon. He wanted to give me some parting advice. He had noticed how much I was struggling with the God talk that I was hearing in the AA meetings that they brought into the rehab. Pointedly, with his finger stuck in my chest, he said, "Joe, I believe in you, but you will never stay sober unless you fill that God-shaped hole in your heart." I was floored, and to be honest, at that moment, I was very angry. But that didn't last long because just an hour later, I was packed up and out the door. What they don't tell you on the last day of rehab is how terrifying the world will be after spending just 6 short weeks learning how to be sober. All the advice they gave me was swirling around in my head, and all I wanted to do was figure out how to get through the day without stopping in a liquor store. But that counselor's words kept popping into my head. You'll never stay sober unless you fill that God-shaped hole in your heart. Desperate, I thought, well, what do I have to lose? So I began church shopping, trying out different churches and different faiths. Nothing fit. I struggled to get through the Christian services because my spiritual wounds were still way too fresh for that. I struggled to sit through formal Zen meditation, but my brain was still too unable to focus at that point. So I shared my struggle with a dear friend of mine named Logan. And without missing a beat, he said, "Why don't you come and check out my church? We're really open-minded and welcoming. You can sit by me. You don't have to stay if you get freaked out. But if you do, there will be cookies after." He knew my kryptonite. So the following Sunday, I met Logan at the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. And we found a pew in the back. Reverend Kathy Schmitz was the minister at that time. And as she got into the pulpit and began her welcome, she ended with the line, "Whoever you are, whatever brings you to this time and place, know that here you are loved and lovable, acceptable and accepted." I felt like she was speaking directly to me, and I began to weep. I felt seen for the first time. I felt loved for the first time. And I felt home. My question for you today is this. When did you know that East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church was your spiritual home? And what are you willing to do to sustain it? I'm going to take a moment to dive in a little bit to our history and organization as a faith, so go with me here. Unitarian Universalism is a community of communities. Our polity, or the way that we organize ourselves, is bottom up. Through the democratic process, each congregation tells the larger organization what to do and how to do it. We are the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. That's our full and proper name. And we are an association of autonomous congregations. Now, the glue that holds us together as an association is called covenant. In our tradition, covenant is a verb. It's an action. Covenant is a living relationship that is subject to review and revision at any time. It's an agreement, and many people consider it a promise. So just like each of you joins in covenant with each other to form East Shore, each congregation within our larger movement joins in covenant with the larger UUA organization. Now, as some of you might be learning, I am a big religion nerd. Clearly, I'm a minister. I'm such a nerd that my favorite thing to do when I travel is to attend services at the UU Church wherever I find myself. And I've never found two UU churches doing church exactly alike. From Erie, PA to Las Vegas, Savannah to Indianapolis, each is truly unique. And that diversity is awesome. That diversity is our strength. Every fellowship, society, congregation, and church, whatever the group is calling itself in our organization, faces unique challenges. The freedom in how we organize ourselves allows each congregation to attend perfectly to the specific needs of its particular community. Now, indeed, we are all members of a larger organization, the Unitarian Universalist Association, but being part of the larger organization doesn't get in the way of addressing those unique local challenges. We don't have a mandated creed or dogma to stumble over, and we aren't required to squeeze our ideas into any official theology. And yet, despite this diversity, I know that I am home whenever I walk into a UU church. I am among my people. I have found refuge and a place to recharge my activist batteries, and I am indeed loved and lovable, acceptable and accepted. How do I know? I know because of covenant. Now, our larger organization, the UUA, writes about covenant, quote, "A covenant is not a contract, but a voluntary relationship. The idea of covenant has biblical origins and traditionally includes the understanding that the relationship is sacred or blessed." A sacred relationship. To join the UUA and to have the right to call itself a Unitarian Universalist gathering place, a congregation makes an agreement between its members and the larger organization. Each community joins the UUA of their own free will and can choose to leave at any time if they want to. And it's right there, covenant, in the opening of our shared principles. Quote, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote." And then it goes on to list our 7 principles, like the worth and dignity of every person. Right? So when I attend any UU church, I know I will be among friends because our association in the same larger organization serves as a shorthand, despite our remarkable and vital diversity. All UUs covenant or agree to work from the same shared values. Here's the other thing that I really love about our faith. I am sure that that last line about shared values really upset someone in this room. Maybe multiple someones. Sitting there thinking, "Joe, how dare you come in here and suggest common belief? How dare you suggest that I am anything other than an individual? What about Emerson? What about Thoreau? What about the Transcendentalists? Harumph!" Friends, I see you. I hear you. I love you. And this next bit is for you. Yes, our free will organization and flexible yet durable covenants are part of our identity as UU congregations. However, we also have a wonderful tradition of lifting up and celebrating the individuality of our members. Those of you who might have been upset when I suggested commonality among us might be leaning into our parallel history of individualism. Now, we could look to Emerson or Thoreau to make a solid argument for rugged individualism. However, I want us to look at a more contemporary figure that helps us have a little more nuance in the argument. In 1946, before the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists, Reverend Dr. A. Powell Davies served All Souls Church, a Unitarian church in Washington, D.C. He's well known for his sermon on the tension we feel when negotiating our individuality with our collective faith movement. And he writes, "A good religion provides companionship, but also respects the separateness of each member. An honest faith sees this as the source of strength, of courage, and of transformation. We seek out others, sensing that we are stronger and safer in a group. So we join a faith community. Here we experience both being as one and belonging with many. It is both paradoxical and true that we find our fellowship most comforting when we are most acutely aware of how separate we can be. For what is belonging but the knowledge that our individual selves are safe and intact in the company of others? What is belonging but the affirmation that each individual has an inherent substance that deserves expression and respect? What is belonging but the willingness to feel alone at times because of one's convictions? And what is belonging but the mutuality of knowing and being known for all our idiosyncrasies and irritating opinions?" Reverend Davies brings forward the need for autonomy in the middle of a community. Our diversity of ideas makes us strong, and our commitment to protecting that diversity of ideas makes us even stronger. We commit to these principles despite, quote, all our idiosyncrasies and irritating opinions. We are ready to forgive these annoyances in others, partly because we know others will forgive our own idiosyncratic and irritating bits. We honor these individual opinions, yours and mine, in our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This is where, in Reverend Davies' words, we find comfort in knowing that, quote, all our individual selves are safe and intact in the company of others. We find forgiveness for each other in our third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. But this freedom to be so individual comes with an incredible amount of responsibility and an incredible risk. What if we give our trust to somebody who breaks covenant? What if we are betrayed by one of our own? Now, I am not referencing anything specific in the history of this church, recent or past, but in general, what if that trust we put in one another is not received and returned? Perhaps that's what it means to belong in our faith. Perhaps that is the root of covenant. We challenge ourselves and equip ourselves with the spiritual tools to sit within that tension. The tension between the virtuous humans we aspire to be and encourage each other to be, and the reality of the actual problematic work in progress humans that we really are. Again, from the UUA. A covenant focuses on the promises one person or group of people make to another person or group of people about how they will support one another and what shared values they will uphold together. Thus, when a covenant is broken or violated, the parties involved focus on restoring the relationship through reconciliation and forgiveness. Most Unitarian Universalists would agree with Jewish philosopher and theologian Martin Buber, who describes humanity as promise-making, promise-breaking, and promise-restoring. Covenant, or sacred promise, is at the heart of our free faith. Promise-making, promise-breaking, and promise-restoring. We challenge each other, and we forgive each other. Now remember that we wouldn't be here if we had not already opened difficult conversations, listened deeply to each other, challenged each other, and found compromises. This is how we bind ourselves together in covenant. We belong because we are willing to continue doing this work. So I ask you again, when did you know that East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church was your spiritual home? When did you know it was time to join in covenant with this dynamic and challenging and inspiring group of people? And what are you willing to do to sustain it? Now, as Christine mentioned, today is the kickoff to our annual stewardship campaign. And I needn't say much more about stewardship, as Christine's reflection so beautifully captured the importance of stewardship. But I will point out that in the next few weeks, members of this congregation will pledge the funds that will allow this spiritual home to continue to exist for another year. As you fill out your pledge card, I ask that you take a moment to ask yourself and consider what this place, these people, this liberal religious movement means to you. Think about how it has shaped your life. and enriched your experience. Remember the promises that you have made to each other, and give as generously as you are able. Now, in 1961, Reverend Donald Harrington gave the sermon at the merging of the Unitarians and the Universalists. He spoke of the, quote, tremendous potential born of this new world's need for a religion which is dynamic instead of static, unitive instead of divisive, universalistic instead of particularistic, history-making rather than history-bound. Friends, when I walked in the door today, I knew you were friends because I know us to be a people who still live into these grand ideals. I know I belong because these ideals are in harmony with my own. We are a dynamic faith of tremendous potential that seeks to unite rather than divide, and to make history rather than repeat it. Our individualism helps us confidently walk our own spiritual paths. Our covenant glues us together and offers us support along the journey. And friends, love is the ingredient that makes all this work. The work of changing the world is hard. We have the tools to achieve that goal. We have the power to succeed because we belong to a faith that is willing to honor each of our voices and is wise enough to know that not one of us could do this work alone. And friends, our faith is prophetic enough to insist that we do this work together. May it be so, and amen. And now, friends, in the light of generosity, I invite you to... I have no words for this. Let's have our offering. How about that?
As a member of the Board of Trustees, I would like to thank you for your attendance today and for all the gifts you have brought with you. The gift of your presence and your support, the gift of the care you give to each other in our individual and shared joys and cares, and the gift of the financial resources that you share with us. Please know that those financial resources are used with diligence and care by your Finance Committee and your Board to help sustain this caring community.
Friends, we come to the end of our service, and I invite you to go forth from this place carrying with you the wisdom you learned here, and sharing with the rest of the world the fellowship and love that you experienced here. And now I invite you to join in our bond of union, and you can find it printed in your service, so please rise. We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom, which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together. And friends, as we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to consider these last few words. And these words come from Reverend Brian Kelly. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. Carry that flame with you as you leave this place and share it with those you know, with those you love, and especially with those you have yet to meet. Go in peace.
Actually, we have several. If you look on the second page of your order of worship, there's a few more things to our service. Sometimes we miss that. So, hello again. I am here to share about our special stewardship event today. First of all, your stewardship team is made up of Ruth Troop, Jen Rose, who is teaching Al right now, Jerry Green, Diana Jackson, and myself. As you've heard, our theme this year is sustenance for our journey together. We have weathered the past 2 years with all its uncertainty in how our church would be done by just making church happen in new and creative ways. The congregation showed up even when not able to be together in person. We continued to sustain the church, and the church sustained us. Just as you may hear something in the worship service that is a little nugget you take with you to ponder or sustain your spirit, we have put together a bag of sustenance filled with home-baked bread, brownies, spiced nuts, and small chocolate eggs to sustain you and sweeten your journey beyond these walls. What we do within these walls or within our congregation ripples out into the communities we are members of. Don't forget to pick up your bag of sustenance and your pledge card before you leave. Please see Ruth for the pledge card and Diana at the sustenance table. The pledge cards can be returned to the box in the red travel case, because we're on this journey. Please return them as soon as you can so that we can work on the budget. You can return the pledge cards to the red case. You can email me directly, and that is in the pledge envelope, or you can mail it to the church with the self-addressed envelope that is provided in your pledge envelope. In addition, we will be doing a raffle of 2 $50 gift cards on March 27th. That is just 2 weeks from today, for the pledge cards that are returned by that time. It will be done at the Blessing of the Animals service. I pledge to East Shore because this is my home, and it is one that we create, build, and share together. I pledge so that others may find the sustenance that this place offers to seekers for spiritual growth, a family of care, and a community committed to love, reverence, discovery, and connection. I have a Post-it note on my calendar at home that I move ahead each month that says, Adventure ahead. Adventure is ahead of us, and we are the sustenance for each other on our journey together.
I know you're all very excited to go get sustained, so I'll make these other announcements as quick as possible. If you look in your order of service, you'll see that you have a number of inserts. I just want to call attention to a couple of those. The Poor People's Campaign, working towards the Moral March on Washington, is making a tour stop here in Cleveland, and that is tomorrow. So if you're available, head on out there. On the other side of that, see a virtual option if that's more your speed. Later in April, anti-racism training. Got announcements for coming services. Passover, April 10th. blessing of the animals later this month, Easter, and our Tenebrae. So make sure you check those out. Some of them require checking in with people if you're going to be participating in things like that. Coming up here soon, tomorrow the 7th principal group meets at 2:30, and the men's group meets at 7. On Wednesday, the prayer circle meets at 6:15 a.m. as it always does. And then about 12 hours later, the finance committee will meet at 6:30. Circle of Mom will meet on Thursday at 6:30. Beverages and Banter will be at 12:30. And then we come around to next Sunday with worship, faith development and owl classes, and a board meeting. So with that, I invite you to go get sustained as we enjoy our postlude.